Hi, welcome to Magical Curiosities. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make these beautiful love potion bottles or love spell bottles. There's so much you could do with these. You could put actual love spells in them. You could put potpourri or crystals or shimmery bath lotions. I love the idea of a shimmery bubble bath that you can just take the lid off and dump right in. Or something just really luxurious. Don't they seem luxurious? Yes. Okay, so I had these mermaid wand videos that I had been promising to do, and a lot of people wanted me to do those before May. And I had the footage, but I've lost it. So I promise you guys I'm going to be doing that soon, along with the unicorn horn video that I lost as well. And hopefully, you guys, Valentine's Day is coming up, and my kids want to do wands for their class. So we're going to be doing Wingardium Leviosa for Valentine's Day. So I'm going to try to do that ASAP, but I know I'm not great at getting videos out when I think I am. So I'm going to try. But happy Valentine's Day, and let's get started. So I got these potion bottles that are heart-shaped from Hobby Lobby. The one on the right, this one I'm holding there, and this little one too, were both Hobby Lobby. And then the middle-sized one was from Michael's. And you want to, about every other week, they have their glass products on 50%. So look for that 50% sale. I got this silicone rose mold on wish.com, and you can find them on Amazon or whatever. But I also have these rose earrings that I'm going to make my own mold out of. And I also have these rose framey type things. They're metal pieces. I think it's called spare parts, but they're in the scrapbooking section of the craft store. And then here's the mold maker called Easy Mold. And these are pretty much at every craft store too. You take equal parts of both of the pieces of the putty and you just start mixing them together real good. And you want to mix really fast, because if you don't mix really fast, then it'll start to harden. It hardens pretty quickly, and I love that it does harden quickly because then I can use it soon, but you do have to work fast. So once it's all mixed together, you just push in your thing that you want to make a mold out of and make sure that the top is about level. And that's pretty much all you do. You leave it there for about half hour, and when you come back, you've got a mold. So that's pretty awesome. It's a little bit expensive for a thing of this, so make sure you bring a coupon for that thing, or go when there's a coupon day. I like especially, Joann's Fabric has, if you get on their text list, they have sometimes a 70% off coupon. It's almost always on a Sunday, unfortunately, but that's my favorite place to get things like this. I started making the word love to put on it, and if you're going to do the same thing, I would maybe write it out on a piece of paper first, because if you're not, unless you're really used to doing cursive or whatever, it might be hard to know exactly where to follow. I do a lot of cursive, so I kind of had that down. So I just you can see me with my finger trying to write it out to remember though, actually. So it might help to just write it out on a piece of paper so that you have something to follow on how to mold it. You just mold it into little thin strips, try to keep it pretty evenly, and then just write it out in cursive. And I'm using my fingers, but I'm telling you, if you use a smaller tool, maybe a silicone tool. I have lots of different tools, and I just use whatever I can see on hand because I'm not super organized, but a little silicone tool or a little ball tool, any of those would be really helpful instead of my clumsy fingers, but I was just using my fingers at the time. So, and also it might have been better to just make it right directly on the glass, and so I wouldn't have to pick it up and then ruin it and redo it, but here we are. And then I'm just redefining the little ends of it, making it more perfected, making it look a little bit more swirly on the ends with my silicone tool. Those are by the Polymer Clay section too, or I think you could also find them in the clay section, the more thicker ones. So just demolding our molds here, and you can see it's flexible, but it's hard, and you can use it right away. And that was a half hour of me doing that love thing, and then they were done. Okay, so the first one that I want to work on is the large one, and we're going to use one of those framey things that I made a mold of, and this one's kind of a triangular framey shape. It's not a full frame, but I'm just using those triangular bits to make a heart frame. So the first one I kind of make into the point, lay it on into the right shape, and then I make another one and kind of curve it into the top part of the heart, and do that twice and kind of blend them together. If you didn't want to put jewels on it, I kind of glue them together with these jewels to cover up the seam, but you could softly put the seam together and kind of carve things that make it kind of flow together naturally, if that makes sense. But I did a little bit of an easy thing by putting the jewels on the seams. After I've got all three of those on and bent perfectly into the way you want, I make some little balls that I want to put these crystals on. So in this method of putting the crystals on, I make a ball and I kind of press the ball into the spot I want it to go, and then get the crystal and push it in. So it's kind of like there's this little round frame around the crystal, kind of like a bezel. And I kind of like to push it around a little bit just to make sure it kind of holds the crystal in. So these particular crystals, they are called Hotfix crystals. They are like the ones that you would get to bedazzle your jeans or whatever. They have adhesive on the back. I like the Swarovski ones the best because they just have the most shine and the most clearness to it. But they can be a little bit expensive. You can get plain ones that don't have Hotfix on the back. But if you do that, you have to bake it, pry it back out, then glue it back in. This one glues it while it's cooking. One thing you do need to avoid using acrylics. If you use acrylic or plastic crystals, they will just melt in the oven. If you do want to use them, you have to press it in, take them out while it's still wet, and then cook, and then glue them back in, because it can never go in the oven. And then I put a whole bunch more on, but I didn't do the little framing thing for all of them. Some of them I just found a little gap and pushed them into the gap. But once you got them all in, you can take some mica powder. And I get this mica powder from the craft store by the Polymer Clay section at Hobby Lobby. Or you can get a big pack of it at Michael's and buy like all the glitters and stuff. And it's kind of expensive, but it lasts forever. So you could do that, or if you don't have any, use like just an eyeshadow or something. You brush it on. If you use a fuzzy brush or a big fluffy brush, it'll get into the cracks. If you use your finger, it'll leave the insides very black inside and have a lot of contrast. So kind of decide which one you want. If you want something in between, use a flat brush. Make sure that there's not excess powder on the brush when you're brushing, otherwise it'll fall right into the cracks. But if you're using that flat brush, then you can kind of just softly paint the flat side onto it. Okay, so the other frame, the round frame that we made the mold for, I'm going to use that one to make the middle potion bottle. The bottom part where it has the longer, I don't know, what do you call it, a longer little filigree thing is going to be the point. And after I made the mold, there was some bits that kind of hung over the edge and were kind of sloppy. So I'm going and cutting those off and kind of just like perfecting it. There was some on the other bits too. So I perfect that, cut a nice straight side to seam it later. Then I'm using the top half of the frame twice for the top of the heart. So you push it in real deep. And when you use your polymer clay in there, I didn't talk too much about the polymer clay yet, but you want to work your polymer clay really good so it's nice and warm and soft so it can really get into the cracks. And I really like souffle clay. It is a really nice quality and really soft, but not too soft. If you get something like Sculpey 3, it can be so soft that it's hard to work with, almost sticky. So in my opinion, souffle clay is the best if you want something soft, or Primo if you want something that's a bit more firm. But you would know if you want Primo because you probably would have been working with polymer clay already. So I suggest the souffle clay. It is really strong when it comes out of the oven. It's not brittle like sometimes the cheaper clays can be, like Sculpey 3, and it's not as slimy or whatever, greasy. So there I'm blending in the pieces. I kind of take off the bits that were like overly molded off the sides, cut it just right so that they can meet together in the right way. And it looks like I have a little extra bit there. And then I try to blend it together with tools and kind of make it feel like that they just belong together. Matching this side together. Looks like I cut it a little short, so I'm stretching it a little bit. So then once you get them to meet perfectly, then you blend them together with the tool of your choice. I really usually use a silicone type of tool, and I like the harder ones. Those blue ones that I have in my hand that you keep seeing are a little soft, but I like the ones that are more firmer, like the ones you would get in the art section rather than the Polymer Clay section that are for like ceramics. Anyway, doing my Hotfix Crystal again. This time I didn't do the ball frame method. I just kind of pressed it right in because it seemed to just call for that. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go and where I like to put things. But I really like having those Hotfix crystals. Now I wanted to show you what it looks like to use your finger to have all that really stark contrast so you can see what I mean. And I think this is probably my preferred method for most things. And maybe I wish I would have done this to the first one, but because I wanted them to all match, I am going to go back on with a brush and kind of make it a little bit more matching to the other one. But you can see how that gives it quite a bit more of a pop because the insides are a lot darker. So at this point you can bake it, and remember, I'm going to do the third bottle first before we bake it, but I do want to say about baking, just make sure you always bake it long enough, follow the instructions, never underbake. Underbaking doesn't make it less fragile, it makes it more fragile. So never, never, never underbake. So here's the little heart bottle. And this one I'm doing like roses all the way around. And I didn't want to just stick them right on the glass. I wanted to put something to stick them onto. So I made this little frame. It's kind of a scrap frame to stick the other clay onto. Clay sticks better to clay than it does to glass, right? So I put that as kind of a little place to grab onto. I made the roses out of those molds, and I'm not using the really large one, the pink one, because it's just too big. It'll be the lid. But the middle one I used a lot of. And you can make a smaller one out of the same rose by cutting off a few petals. And then it's kind of sharp on the sides when you cut them off, so you kind of round it with your fingers, put it back on. And I like to use the not Sharpie, that's a pencil. I mean a marker. This blade thing, I can't think of words right now. Use the little blade to stick into the petals and kind of make a deeper petal or reshape the petals or just maybe more define it is what I've been doing with the blade. X-Acto knife. So using the X-Acto knife, I'm kind of molding the petals into deeper petals. And so each petal I'll kind of stick into the little frame so it sticks real well by kind of pushing a ball tool or something in the base. And then you just keep putting them on and on and on. And I did find that those little tiny roses were really hard to do. So there's very few of them on there. Mostly it's the medium roses. And this, you guys, was the hardest of all three of the bottles to do. It might not look it. It might look like the easiest one, because it has no jewels, but it was the hardest for sure. And if you hand sculpted your roses, it'd be even harder. So just so you know, the tedium, this one took probably almost an hour. I don't know why. It was just the longest one to do because I had to keep adjusting the roses. But I think it was worth it. I love this one. So I made kind of a frame around it, and I was going to keep it a frame, but then I kind of blended the frame around the roses so that it had this really straight edge. Paint it, cooked it. After you cook it, you pry it off and glue it back on, because even though it kind of sticks, if you don't have your your clay going all around a bottle, it will probably eventually fall off with rough usage or just moving it around. So it's always my suggestion that you pry it off and then glue it back on. But At the time that I baked these, I wasn't planning on making lids. I was just going to use the corks, but I decided I want to make a cork. So we're not going to glue them on yet. I made the cork out of the big rose, and I got this huge chunk of clay, and I'm using this clay to make the topper. So this topper isn't like a tight fitting topper or anything, and you can see the bottom of that is just kind of like a point so that it will sit into there and cover the top. But it's not tight fitting or anything. If you knock over the bottle, it's gonna fall out of it, right? Not like a cork. But it will keep anything from evaporating or getting any debris from just floating in, dust and stuff into whatever product you have inside. So there's your topper for that. And that was pretty easy. Here's the topper for the middle one. I thought I have a big collection of these little crystals. Large crystals, kind of like the ones you would have on a chandelier. And I get them from Joann's. I love the Joann's crystals. So I picked a round, basic kind of teardropped one, and I'm rolling it on the edge of the counter because it's like a flat one. I couldn't roll it along the counter to smooth it out. But I'm trying to make the cork part of it round, obviously, because the round part of the bottle, even though the crystal on top is more flat. So that was kind of a weird challenge I didn't really expect. It's a little funny. So then I smear it into the crystal once I've kind of got the idea of the shape, just because I'm going to be using the very same frame mold that I used for the heart. I'm going to be using on the crystal, kind of to have it match. And I take a little bit off the back side of it. The back side is the side that has the coating, because the front side has no coating, that coating that gives it that kind of rainbow aura. And I kind of take a little bit of that off because the frame kind of goes lower in the back. So I do a half frame again, pull it, stretch it so that it's like straight. That takes a little finessing. And then just using your knife and kind of cutting all of those excess bits that kind of spilled over the edge. And you'll want to smooth those with a silicone or your finger or something so that it's not sharp cuts. But you take all those bits out. Cut a straight line so that you can easily match them in the back. And I probably should have measured first before I cut them. But one nice thing about soft clay that you've been working really well is that it can stretch pretty easily. If you're using Primo, you probably could not stretch it as easily, but the souffle clay can stretch. So you match it in the back and blend it just like you did with the frame on the front of the heart. I'm using the silicone tool to kind of blend it without completely erasing the detail. And I think I may have erased a little detail and go back and recarve that with a little ball tool. Then I'm rounding out the bottom to make it like a perfect cork size for the bottle. But it was a little hard because, like I said, the thing is flat, the crystal's flat. So I kept messing up there. But what I decided to do was that I would put like a little round thing of clay around the sides so that it had something to really sit on instead of being like this arbitrary, where is it going to stop thing. And then when I did, it still had a gap in the back. So I made the gap have this kind of big ledge so that it would cover the whole thing and not have a gap. But because I had that weird ledge, I thought I should do something cool with that. And so I carved into it the word love. So if you see it from the back, it's not like, oh, why there's a weird ledge. It's like, oh, look, there's this cute little ledge that says love. So if there's something weird or you make a mistake or something's not right, just use your creativity and make it into a feature instead of a problem. So that's what I did with that. I wish I would have used stamps. I don't have the greatest handwriting when I use a carving tool, but there we go. And I pressed a crystal right into the front. I considered doing a lot more, but I didn't want to overdo it. Like, I think I really am tempted all the time to overdo it. I put way too much and forgot to tap off the excess. So as you can see, that big, huge white spot, that's going to be like that for good. But I'll try to match the rest of it around that bit with lots and lots. Plus that'll kind of keep it from coming off. So I didn't tell you too much about using this powder, but you guys, when you put this powder on, it's permanent. You're not going to have to seal it. It's permanent. It's so crazy to think that, but it will not wash off. It doesn't rub off after you bake it. It like sticks to it and it's permanent. I think it's amazing. And I way prefer it over painting. Some people prefer to do black and then paint after, but I just way prefer the mica powder. It just shimmers way better than a paint does, and you don't have to worry about layers or streaks. So I'm trying to figure out, because I have this huge hole in this large bottle, what to do without like using so much clay, because that much clay I would have to bake forever, and also it's a waste of clay. So I decided to just go ahead and use the cork that goes on it, and I put my clay through my pasta roller. You guys, this pasta roller is not for pasta. It's my clay roller, and I only use it for clay, but it is called a pasta roller. And I rolled that out and kind of wrapped it around. You could just roll it out with a rolling pin if you prefer, or just something round if you don't have a rolling pin, to get it kind of flat to wrap around. That gives it a smooth wrap around. And then it's like a cupcake almost right now, and I'm putting a marble on top. I loved that the marble kind of had the same sheen as the crystals I've been using, kind of that. It's almost a rainbowy sheen, but it had a pinkness to it that was more mystical to me than using a pink crystal. So I love this rainbowish sheen that you see on actually quite a lot of crystals, and a lot of marbles too. So it's got this rainbow sheen marble on it. But you could totally, if you love real crystals, they have lots of round shaped crystals that you could, or stones, natural stones, if they mean something to you, if you could use those instead. Maybe rose quartz, since it's a love potion, right? So I'm pretty excited about it. It sits flat on top, but I will be making something to hold the thing in on the bottom later. So I push this marble into it and kind of smear it into the marble. And then using the same mold that I used for the frame of the heart on the bottle, I am using for the lid as well, just like with the other ones, so they match. So I push it into the mold, and just like before, scrape off the excess that I might have had, and then place it on and kind of push it into the other clay, enough for it to stick, but not pushing so much that you lose the details of your mold. So I was still playing with it, not exactly sure what I was going to do. I decided to do 2 of these, and the other one's going to be going the opposite way, and then they'll kind of, I don't know, wrap around together. So one kind of faces up, the other faces down. At this point, I didn't even know which way I wanted to be, front and back, but I kind of made them blend in a way that looked like they are one continuous frame that goes around it, or border. I'm digging it. So then I get my crystal. Maybe I skipped showing the crystal, or maybe I do the crystal next, but sorry, I have a stamp. This is just a rubber stamp, and it's got this pretty little filigree design. And along the flat part, I didn't want to just leave it flat, because it was kind of looking like cottage cheese thighs, like my cellulite or something. And it was really hard to smooth out. It's really hard to get a perfectly smooth, round piece. So the stamp kind of forgives some of those. And then I pressed in some crystals in some of the spots. So for the bottom, I have a cookie cutter that's about the same size as the hole in my jar, and I glue that to the bottom of it so that the top of this one that I made that I'm putting the glue on sits on top, and the middle part just kind of keeps it on. Does that make sense? I have to let it dry on there, and then I set it inside. And it did fit, so then I've got to put the color on it, and we'll put it on top of the thing to bake. Oh, I forgot, gluing it on. I'm not just using a regular glue. You can't bake with a regular glue. That is bakeable bond. It's a sculpty bakeable bond. You could do it with any liquid sculpty type of liquid sculpty. It helps bond things that you're not really going to be smearing into each other. So I'm baking the lids. 275 is my temperature for the brand that I'm using. And then after baking the lids and the frames, I can finally do my second to last wash of the bottles, get them nice and shiny, and washing the crystals, the little ones too. And I'm using glass cleaner and a paper towel to get them nice and shiny, because the polymer clay is really quite greasy feeling and it leaves handprints all over the place. And then also the mica powder will leave quite a mess as well. That's kind of hard to clean up around everything. So it's nice to clean it up before you glue everything on. So I've got a glue. I like the E6000, couldn't find that, but I have Quick Grip, which is almost the same thing. Any of these really strong, clear, flexible glues will work. You could also use an epoxy glue, but epoxy glue is much more difficult to work with because you really cannot touch it. And I probably shouldn't be touching this one, but I did. You want to put it on very thin so you don't have glue seeping out the sides, but also thick enough that it makes a secure bond. So find that even balance of not goopy, but also enough. I hope you love this tutorial, and I hope you try it. And if you have questions, please let me know. I did talk really fast, and I went through a lot of things really fast because this is already like 25 minutes long, I think. And I didn't want it to be, forever long. So I did try to go fast, but I feel like there's a lot of things you might have questions about. And if you do, I would be happy to answer them. Just ask in the comments, and I will do my best to reply. If there's anything else you'd like to see, let me know. I do, like I said, have my mermaid wand tutorial coming out really soon. I'm so sorry it took me so long, you guys. And then in May, I'll have a lot more mermaid stuff. And hopefully maybe one more Valentine thing if I can squeeze it in. Love you guys. I hope you have the greatest day. I hope you have the greatest year. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy love. Bye.